Ubisoft Massive's ultra-hyped open-world experience The Division is finally here, and ironically the only things holding it back are the uniquely Ubisoft things about it. So, what is it about? The Division is set in a post-pandemic New York City after a weaponized virus was transmitted through dollar bills on Black Friday, killing most of the population in a matter of days. Presidential Directive 51 is enacted, activating Division sleeper agents in quarantine cities to maintain continuity of government in the aftermath. It's an interesting and compelling fiction which sets up a bleak and dangerous world that begs to be explored. After you create your agent, from which there are admittedly limited possibilities, you're off out into the open world basically. So the story itself, whilst the lore and the concept is fascinating and disturbing, it creates a real sense of immersion. I did find it difficult to connect with the world when it feels like nothing's at stake essentially. Everyone is pretty much already dead, there's no going back after what's happened, and no immediate threat to your voiceless characters' rather mundane goals. Since there really are no memorable characters in the story, it's difficult to empathise with their situations, especially with the dreadful writing that's on display here. The lack of a true human antagonist for the vast majority of the game gave me no real incentive to finish the story missions either, other than for the purposes of levelling up. That being said, with 15 to 20 hours of story content straight out of the gate, it was considerably more than I expected from a third-person shooter MMO, and has true, perhaps deliberate, potential for narrative expansion in future DLC. So, the gameplay. This is where the Division truly shines. Really solid third-person cover-based gunplay that emphasises teamwork and character customization from a gear to skill-based level to enable you to adapt to different combat scenarios. This is an RPG primarily, so those expecting an ultra-realistic one-shot, one-kill shooter dynamic will be turned off by the bullet-spongy enemies, which is something totally at odds with the Tom Clancy brand, which is so famous for its realism, and oddly polarising to those not expecting it. Regardless, there are a ridiculous amount of skills, stats, weapons and gear to tweak, customise and mess with. Weapons and loot range in quality from worn items, which are grey, to high-end items which are gold, the rarest of which have unique talents and perks similar to Diablo or Borderlands. It feels that Ubisoft have learnt a lot from their experiences with other IPs building this. Movement and gunplay is reminiscent of Splinter Cell and Ghost Recon, whilst the beautiful and intuitive UI and its 3D mapping properties evoke all the best parts of Watch Dogs. Admittedly, there weren't many great parts of Watch Dogs, but the UI was one of them. It's really cool to watch Isaac, the intelligent systems analytic computer, kind of like Jarvis in Iron Man, reconstruct events in 3D around you from archived phone data, nearby CCTV and laptops, Batman style, giving you a window into the chaos of the outbreak itself. Upgrading your base of operations and its 3 wings, tech, medical and security, allows you to spec into the respective skill trees and build whatever character you want. However, you can quite easily unlock everything and jump from healer to tank on the fly, which is tactically great, but also almost eliminates the need to build a second or third character unless you want to grind challenges for loot. Now, the Dark Zone. This is the Division's PvP area. It's a huge walled off part of the city, divided into 6 zones with increasingly difficult AI opponents guarding rare and powerful loot, and is a place designed for squad play. In fact, it's pretty much essential to have a full team in there. It's entirely possible to wait for an enemy squad to kill a boss and all nearby NPCs, then turn on them, killing them, stealing all their loot, money and XP, as well as going rogue at the same time, essentially forcing you to survive a manhunt from other players that are on the same server. However, the risk versus reward of this unique PvP system is unfortunately unbalanced. Even though it's been patched a couple of times, I believe, you still run into a lot of trolls and people abusing it, and I'm not sure whether or not it's ever going to be truly balanced. As such, it's damaging to the post-story endgame character mastery part of the game, which essentially is the Dark Zone. You will be spending the majority of your time in the Dark Zone once you finish the main story to find all of the best gear. Graphically, The Division is absolutely stunning. We all saw and heard everything about what it was like in E3 back in 2013, and for the most part it's still there. It's not one of the cases where it was almost too good to be true. Fair enough, it might not look as amazing as the tech demo that they showed us on like day one when it was first revealed, but what they've managed to achieve, especially on the consoles, I played it on PlayStation 4, for those that are wondering, really is quite remarkable. Dynamic weather cloaks Manhattan and your character in snow that melts when you go indoors. It's really, really detailed. The bleak horror of a largely dead city where cars and resources are abandoned, it creates great atmosphere and tension. There are tons of nooks and crannies to explore: subways, office blocks, apartment buildings, rooftop terraces, abandoned businesses, all hiding valuable loot, and many of the game's hundreds and hundreds of collectible items. Now, this is something that particularly gets under my skin with a lot of Ubisoft games, is that they populate their world essentially not in the same way that a developer like Bethesda do, where there's lots of random junk which you can then make into various other things. It seems to just be a bunch of little narrative threads thrown in as Easter eggs and chucked around the world for you to go and find when you get bored of doing mission. And whilst it's fun to run across these and find the little stories that go behind them, I didn't really find myself going out of my way to look for all of these things. In fact, there's still probably about 50 of them that I haven't found, and I really can't be bothered to go back to them. The same kind of effect that the Riddler trophies had for me in the Batman games. Whilst I'm sure devotees will absolutely love going after them, and if you play a lot of Ubisoft games you'll understand, for me the lure of collectibles wasn't really there. So, overall, what do I think? Well, The Division is atmospheric and absolutely beautiful to look at. It has amazing sound design. The sound of the wind, the snow, the guns, the echoing and crack of bullets down long streets. The voice acting is all pretty much top notch. It's got a compelling and complex fiction, an excellent gameplay mechanic, and it's an excellent co-op RPG. It really shines as a co-op game. On the negative side, the ultra-realism of the game and its engine is offset by the bullet-spongy enemies, which just seem weird given the situation. A guy with a bulletproof hoodie really doesn't cut the mustard. In fact, that it's such a big issue that it would be much better off without the Tom Clancy branding. You associate the Tom Clancy games with realism from the ground up. Another negative, of course, is the badly told story with uninteresting and bland characters. There's a few janky textures and weird bugs here and there, but nothing totally game-breaking. I've had people like Jamboster who've got stuck inside walls. I've had people who I've played with who've fallen through the floor, but these are nothing new, even in fully finished Ubisoft games, due to the nature of the engine. And for the most part, I didn't experience any during my gameplay, and I've put in must be about 80 hours by now. The endgame and PvP sadly are pretty broken and in need of a lot of balancing, and it's really not a great solo experience. You do need friends to play this with to really feel the benefit of it. Overall, I think Tom Clancy's The Division is a good game, and it's certainly very fun if you're playing with friends, but don't expect to have a great time playing solo, and certainly don't play it for the story. This is an MMORPG, it's designed to be played with friends, and if you like your Borderlands games, if you like the Diablo games, if you like those loot hoarding games, you'll really enjoy this. For those seeking a realistic shooter, you'd better look somewhere else, because it's certainly not that. However, it is fun to play. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. It's well worth a look, especially if you've got friends who are playing it at the minute. It's certainly worth picking up, and the future looks bright for it in terms of the promise of certain free expansions and a lot of potential for DLC expansion as well, which hopefully could make the story and the lore, which is so interesting, more meaningful. I've been the Sofa Soldier. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.